Hey there, dart nerds, double mechanics, and tungsten tacticians. Welcome back to Dart Brain, the podcast where your dartboard never lies about how committed you are, even if your practice diary is as fictional as Bigfoot sightings. Today's episode is all about commitment, not the kind where you put a ring on it, though let's be honest, some of us spend more time staring at our dartboard than our partners. No, we're talking about the kind of commitment that separates dart players who improve year after year from those who just keep telling themselves, I'll get serious next season. Here's the thing. Motivation and commitment are not the same beast. Motivation is the chimp brain's sugar rush. It's that surge of excitement you feel after watching Luke Littler hit another jaw-dropping 9-darter. Motivation gets you off the couch once, maybe twice. But then the chimp brain sees nachos, Netflix, or literally anything easier than practicing your doubles, and poof, motivation disappears faster than your average when someone mentions math at the hockey. Commitment, on the other hand, is the professor brain's long-term contract. It's the boring but reliable grown-up who makes sure you actually follow through when the chimp is whining. Motivation is a spark. Commitment is the fuel tank. You need the spark to start the fire, but without fuel, you're left shivering in the cold. Sports psychology backs this up. Research on self-determination theory shows us that intrinsic motivation, the kind that comes from loving the game itself, is powerful, but it's still fragile without commitment to back it up. While work on goal-setting theory tells us that commitment to a goal is one of the strongest predictors of whether you'll actually achieve it. Translation? You can want it, but unless you're committed to working for it, you're just daydreaming. And here's a crucial idea for today. Commitment isn't a switch you flip on or off. It's a scale. You're not committed or uncommitted. You're somewhere on a scale from barely showing up on league night to practicing like Rocky Balboa before a title fight. And here's the really important part. It's okay to be wherever you are on that scale. You don't have to be chasing a world title to get better at darts. A small boost in commitment can make a massive difference, especially early in your darts journey. If you've only been playing on league night, adding a couple hours of deliberate practice a week can move the needle in a big way. And by deliberate, I mean focus drills like we talked about in episode 7, not just hurling darts at the board and hoping magic happens. If you're already logging 10 plus hours a week, nudging that up to 12 might help, but it won't be as dramatic a leap as going from 0 hours to 2 hours. And if you've got kids, a job, a partner, and a life outside of darts, who doesn't, you don't need to feel guilty about not living at the hockey. Your commitment should fit your reality. That's what makes it sustainable. On the flip side, if you're deeply committed and have the time to put in 15 to 20 hours a week, then your goals should stretch you. Aim higher. Because nothing frustrates the chimp brain more than being all in without a worthy challenge. So in this episode, we're going to unpack why motivation is overrated and often misused, how to understand where you actually sit on the commitment scale, how to align your goals with your true level of commitment so you don't end up frustrated or burned out, and finally, how to train your professor brain to keep you steady when the chimp inevitably throws a tantrum. This is also where we revisit one of the dart brain guardians, commitment, and its ever-sabotaging gremlin twin, neglect. Neglect whispers, skip practice, you've had a long day. Commitment answers, pick up the darts, 10 minutes is still progress. So buckle up, dart nerds. Today we're pulling apart the motivation myth, feeding the guardian of commitment, and teaching your chimp brain that nachos taste better after practice. 3 quick notes before we launch into part 1. First, since we're talking about commitment, here's our listener question for this episode. Where would you put yourself right now on the commitment scale? Casual, steady, or all in? I'll post this in the Dart Brain Podcast Facebook group so you can chime in. Second, don't miss an episode of Dart Brain. Subscribe now, wherever you're listening. Because let's be honest, missing an episode is like missing your doubles. Frustrating, unnecessary, and it makes your chimp brain very, very angry. And while you're at it, follow us on Facebook. That's where the real post-match banter happens. And lastly, this wasn't the episode I'd planned. I was hoping to do a mailbag episode based on your listener questions so far. It wasn't a huge success, but hey, we're just getting started and growing our listeners. But if you've got questions you'd like to have answered on the Dart Brain podcast, feel free to post them in our Facebook group. Chances are you'll get lots of great insights from other listeners, and we'll try to snap them up and get them into future episodes. All right, with that out of the way, let's dive in. Part 1. Why motivation fails without commitment. Motivation is the shiny set of new darts in the shop window. They look amazing. They feel amazing. You tell yourself, once I have that, everything will change. And sure, the first couple of days you're buzzing. You throw a few legs, maybe even try out a new practice routine. But then life happens. Netflix drops a new series. The chimp brain whispers, let's skip practice just this once. We'll make it up tomorrow. Suddenly, that shiny dart set is gathering dust and your commitment is gathering cobwebs. That's the problem with motivation. It's fickle, it comes in waves, and it doesn't care about your goals. Sports psychology research backs this up. Self-determination theory distinguishes between two main types of motivation. First, extrinsic, doing something for rewards, recognition, or to avoid punishment. And second, intrinsic, doing something because you actually enjoy it. Both are useful, but neither guarantees consistency. Even if you love darts, there are days when the chimp brain says, nope, not today. This is where commitment comes in. Commitment is the boring but essential older sibling of motivation. Where motivation is the hype man, commitment is the one making sure you actually show up. Research on self-control shows that willpower works like a muscle. It can be trained, but it's also limited. That's why relying purely on motivation is a recipe for disappointment. It burns out fast. Commitment, on the other hand, is about building systems, habits, and routines that make showing up easier than skipping out. Let's make this concrete. Imagine two dart players. Player A is highly motivated after watching the PDC World Championship. They buy new darts, set up a practice routine, and swear that this is the year they get serious. For 2 weeks, they're all in. But then work gets busy. The chimp brain starts whining, and suddenly that serious routine is just a memory. Player B, on the other hand, doesn't feel fireworks of motivation. They just make a quiet commitment, 30 minutes of practice, 3 times a week. It doesn't sound like much, but 6 months later, Player B has logged 40 plus hours of focused practice, while Player A has logged, 2 good weeks in January. Who do you think is hitting more doubles by summer? This is exactly what researchers found in their work on goal-setting theory. The strongest predictor of achievement isn't how much you want something, it's how committed you are to the process of getting it. That's true in darts, fitness, work, and pretty much everything else. Your chimp brain loves motivation. It feels exciting, it feels fun, but the professor brain knows that motivation doesn't last. Commitment isn't sexy, but it wins matches. It's the difference between the player who talks about practicing and the one who quietly keeps a log of every checkout drill they run. So in this first part, I want you to remember this simple truth. Motivation might get you started, but commitment is what keeps the darts flying. If you're relying only on motivation, you'll hit walls, miss doubles, and get frustrated. But if you build commitment, you give yourself something much more powerful, consistency. And consistency is what creates excellence. Part 2, the commitment scale. It's not a switch. Here's the problem with how most darts players think about commitment. They treat it like a light switch. Click, now I'm committed. Click, now I'm not. But commitment isn't a switch, it's a dimmer. Some nights it's blazing bright, other nights it's more like the mood lighting in a dodgy pub bathroom. You're always somewhere on that scale. Maybe you're at once a week league night and no more. Maybe you're at 3 hours a week with a practice journal and Spotify playlist titled Serious Darts Only. Or maybe you're at, I have officially lost custody of my Netflix account because I spend all my evenings at the Aki. The mistake is pretending that everyone needs to crank their dimmer all the way up to 11. You don't. You don't have to train like a professional to get better. Small boosts in commitment can have ridiculous payoffs, especially early on. If you've been doing zero practice outside of league night, then adding 2 hours a week of deliberate practice, episode 7 shout out, is like strapping a turbo engine to your game. Suddenly, you're checking out 64 instead of staring at it like it's hieroglyphics. But the higher you climb, the less dramatic the leaps. Going from 0 to 2 hours a week, huge difference. Going from 10 to 12, sure, it helps, but it's not going to turn you into Luke Littler overnight. That's called the law of diminishing returns. Or, as the chimp brain would phrase it, wait, I practiced more and I didn't instantly get amazing? What's the point? Let's eat nachos. And this is where people get in trouble. They see others grinding 15 hours a week and think that's what I need to do. But if you've got a job, kids, bills, and a partner who already suspects you love your dartboard more than them, then aiming for 15 hours a week is setting yourself up for guilt and failure. And guilt is a gremlin's favorite snack. Instead, own where you are on the scale. 2 hours a week? Great. Make it a solid 2 hours of focused, intentional practice and you'll see growth. 10 hours a week? Fantastic. Push it to 12 if you want, but know that your gains will be subtler. What matters is that your goals match your commitment level. Don't tell yourself you're going to win a PDC Tour card on a league night plus occasionally throwing a few darts when the dishwasher is running level of commitment. That's like signing up for a marathon because you once jogged for the bus. Sports psychology backs this up. Research shows goals work best when they're both challenging and realistic. If they're too easy, your professor brain gets bored. If they're too hard, your chimp brain flips the tables and storms off. Get them just right, and you've got fuel for progress that lasts. So let's drop the myth that commitment is all or nothing. It's not about flipping the switch. It's about knowing where your dimmer is set and nudging it up a notch when you're ready. Part 3. Chimp versus professor on motivation. All right, let's talk about what happens when your chimp and your professor sit down at the dartboard together. Spoiler, it's not a team effort. It's more like a sitcom where one character wants to study for finals and the other keeps ordering pizza. Here's the deal. The chimp loves motivation. It gobbles it up like free bar snacks. Motivation feels good. It's exciting. It's shiny. The chimp brain loves the idea of improvement. That's why it's the one that tells you, this is the year I'm finally going to hit a 180. But it's also the one that tells you 5 minutes later, or hear me out, what if we just binge that new Netflix series instead? The professor brain, on the other hand, couldn't care less about motivation. The professor is boring. Spreadsheets, timetables, ticking off practice logs. No fireworks, no big dopamine hits. Just quiet, boring consistency. And yet, guess who wins in the long run? Yeah, the boring professor. Sports psychology has a field day with this stuff. Work on willpower basically shows that motivation is a sugar high, quick energy, fast crash. Commitment, structure, and habits, that's the slow-burning fuel. Angela Duckworth, who has a fantastic TED Talk, which I'll put in the description, calls this grit. The ability to keep going when your chimp would rather do literally anything else. Picture it like this. Your chimp brain is the hype man at a darts exhibition. It's loud, it's exciting, it makes everyone feel pumped up. But when the lights go out and the crowd goes home, it's the professor brain sweeping up, locking the doors, and making sure you're ready for tomorrow. One gets the applause, the other gets the work done. And here's a funny thing you've already learned about the chimp. It doesn't respond well to reason once it's in full tantrum mode. You can't argue with it mid-meltdown. You've been there. A missed double, the chimp screams, "You're useless!" and suddenly you're 3 legs deep into Tilt City. This is why your best defense isn't to argue with the chimp, but to build structures beforehand that keep it in check. That's where commitment comes in. Commitment is like chimp-proofing your practice routine. Here's an example. The chimp says, "We don't have time to practice tonight." Commitment answers, "We already set up the dartboard and put the darts out, so we'll just throw for 10 minutes. The chimp says, "We'll never be good enough. What's the point?" Commitment answers, "We don't need to be the world champion tonight. We just need to hit 5 out of 10 on the doubles." See how the professor brain sets the rules and commitment enforces them? This is why habits are so powerful. James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about reducing friction. The less effort it is to start, the less power the chimp has to stop you. Want to practice more? Leave the board set up, darts ready, and a specific drill written down. That way, the chimp doesn't have time to negotiate nachos versus practice because the professor has already loaded the dice. And here's where it gets fun. You can actually trick your chimp into compliance. The chimp loves short-term wins. So instead of saying, "I'm going to practice for 2 hours, say, "I'm going to throw for 10 minutes. 9 out of 10 times, once you start, you'll keep going. That's because the professor used a clever little hack called the just one rule to get the chimp moving. So here's the bottom line of this part. Motivation is chimp food. It feels good in the moment, but vanishes fast. Commitment is professor food. It's broccoli, boring, steady, and way better for you in the long term. The real skill of dart psychology is learning how to let the professor set the menu and only let the chimp order dessert when it's earned it. Part 4. Aligning goals with commitment. Here's where most dart players blow it. They set goals that don't match their level of commitment. It's like walking into a pub, announcing you're going to hit a 9-darter tonight, then ordering 3 pitchers before your first throw. The math doesn't add up. Here's the rule of thumb. Your goals need to fit your commitment, not your daydreams. Let's break it down. If you're only putting in 2 hours of deliberate practice a week, your goals should reflect that. Maybe your aim is to raise your average by 5 points this season, or finally sort out that pesky double 16. Those are achievable, realistic goals for your scale of commitment. But if you say you want to win a national title on 2 hours of practice a week, you're setting yourself up for chimp chaos. The chimp loves that kind of goal. It's flashy, it's exciting, it makes you feel like a hero in your own montage. But the professor brain is sitting in the corner with its head in its hands, muttering, "This is not going to end well." Now, if you're putting in 10 to 15 hours a week, that's different. At that level, you should set bigger, scarier goals. Enter tournaments, push for country or regional teams, target consistent 70, 80, and 90 plus averages. Because if your goals are too small for your commitment level, you'll get bored. And boredom is just another gremlin in disguise. It invites neglect and distraction to stroll right into the party. Sports psychology backs this up again. Goal-setting theory tells us that the best goals are challenging but achievable. Too easy and your professor brain checks out. Too hard and your chimp has a full-blown tantrum. But when you hit the sweet spot, challenging and realistic, you've got a recipe for progress that sticks. So let's put this in dart terms with an example. The hours and goals in these examples aren't so important. They're just an example. There's nothing that says that you can't make your provincial, state, or county team on 2 really good hours of practice a week, although it may be tough. So, low commitment, 2 hours a week. A realistic goal, hit 5 out of 10 darts at a chosen double in practice, or raise my league average by 3 points this season. Medium commitment, 5 to 7 hours a week. A realistic goal, win 60% of my league matches, or shoot 180 every practice week. And high commitment, 10 plus hours per week. Realistic goal, qualify for a regional national event, or average 80 plus in a competition. As I said, don't worry so much about the hours that were described or the goals that were described. What's important is to notice how the goalposts shift with the level of commitment. Same sport, same skills, different expectations. And here's the part most people forget. Darts isn't your whole life. If you've got kids, a demanding job, a partner, and responsibilities, you shouldn't feel guilty about not training like a tour card holder. Your level of commitment is allowed to reflect your life circumstances. That doesn't mean you can't improve. It just means your goals need to fit your scale, not somebody else's. The chimp loves comparison. It scrolls Facebook or TikTok, sees some 14-year-old hitting 12 darters in their bedroom and screams, "We'll never be that good. Why bother?" But the professor brain says, hold on, that kid has 8 free hours a day. You've got 45 minutes between bedtime stories and doing the dishes. Different scales, different goals. Stop comparing bananas to broccoli. So here's the golden rule of this part. Match your goals to your commitment level. Dream big, but plan smart, because nothing derails progress faster than goals that don't line up with the fuel you're actually putting in the tank. Part 5, habits and routines, where commitment lives. If commitment is the fuel tank, then habits and routines are the actual engine that burns it. Without them, all the motivation in the world is just fumes. Here's the reality. Nobody feels like practicing every day. Not even the pros. Your chimp will always come up with better offers. Nachos, naps, Netflix, or literally staring at the wall. The professor's brain's secret weapon? Habits. They take "should I practice today?" off the table entirely. Think of it this way. Brushing your teeth isn't exciting. Nobody wakes up motivated to floss. You just do it because it's part of life. That's what practice can become if you build the right routines. Automatic, non-negotiable, and chimp-proof. Sports psychology and all the pop psych gurus like James Clear of Atomic Habits fame tell us the key is reducing friction. Make it easy to start. Leave your dartboard set up. Keep your darts handy. Write your practice drills on a sticky note. That way, when your chimp brain says, "We don't have time," your professor says, "Shut it. It's literally right there." And remember this, commitment isn't about time, it's about quality. 15 minutes of deliberate practice beats 3 hours of mindless chucking every single time. Anders Ericsson's research on deliberate practice shows that focus, structured reps build expertise far faster than just getting your hours in. If you spend 3 hours lobbing darts at triple 20 while daydreaming about what's for dinner, your chimp has technically practiced, but your professor knows better. This is where routines matter most. A good pre-practice ritual signals to your brain it's go time. Maybe you always start with 10 checkouts at double tops. Maybe you light a candle and whisper, "Don't let me down, tungsten gods." Whatever it is, consistency is the point. Habits anchor your professor brain's control and starve the chimp of excuses. And let's not forget the small, sneaky power of habit stacking. Attach practice to something you already do. Example, every night after dinner, 20 minutes at the board. Or every morning after coffee, 50 darts at your weakest double. Suddenly, practice isn't something extra, it's just part of the flow. The guardian of commitment lives here, in these routines. Neglect, its gremlin twin, thrives in the gaps. I'll practice tomorrow is neglect's favorite line. Habits close the gap. They remove the negotiation. So if you want your commitment to last, stop chasing motivation spikes and start building systems, because systems beat moods. Systems beat excuses. And systems carry you through the weeks when your chimp is being particularly loud and whiny. At the end of the day, champions aren't made of motivation. They're made of boring, repeatable routines stacked up over years. Not sexy, but true. And if you stick with these habits, guess what? You'll quietly start beating players who had way more motivation but never built a routine. Because in darts, as in life, consistency always wins. Part 6. Gremlins and Guardians. Commitment versus neglect. Every guardian in the dart brain model has a gremlin twin. And when it comes to commitment, the gremlin's name is neglect. Neglect is sneaky. It doesn't scream in your face like tilt does. It just whispers excuses. You've had a long day, skip practice. One missed session won't matter. We'll make it up next week. Before you know it, neglect has stolen whole seasons from you. Commitment is the guardian that stands up to neglect. Commitment doesn't need fireworks or hype. It's the steady voice that says, 10 minutes is better than nothing. Let's get started. It's the quiet power of showing up, even when you don't feel like it. Now, I can already hear Shane in the background saying, yeah, but I play better when I don't practice. Which, by the way, is the kind of thing people say right before losing 5-0. Shane is basically neglect's spokesperson. He'd show up to a Tony Robbins seminar with a pillow and blanket. Now, everyone has a bit of Shane in them. We all rationalize skipping practice sometimes. The difference between neglect running the show and commitment running the show is whether you give in every time or you build a pattern of showing up anyway. Sports psychology research on self-regulation tells us that the most successful athletes aren't the ones who never feel lazy, they're the ones who have structures in place to overcome laziness. In other words, the professor brain has already accounted for Shane's nonsense. Here's the best part. Every time you resist neglect and choose commitment, you're strengthening the guardian, like a muscle. The next time it gets easier, and the next time easier still. Commitment compounds. Neglect compounds too, only in the wrong direction. So here's the call out. Stop feeding neglect and start feeding commitment. When your chimp brain or your inner Shane says, we'll do it later, let the professor brain reply, we'll do it now, even if just for 10 minutes. That's how you grow the guardian, one small win at a time. Part 7, practical tools and takeaways. All right, we've talked about motivation, commitment, gremlins, guardians, chimps, and professors, but how do you actually use this stuff in your darts life? Let's get practical. 1. Measure your commitment scale honestly. First, ask yourself, where am I on the scale right now? Not where you wish you were, not where Shane claims he is, but where you actually are. Be honest. If you're only hitting the board once a week, say so. If you're grinding 10 hours, own it. Clarity is power. 2. Match your goals to your commitment. Once you know your spot on the scale, set goals to fit it. 2 hours a week, aim to hit doubles consistently or raise your average by a few points this season. 5 to 7 hours, push for more league wins or enter local opens. 10 plus hours, it's time to chase bigger targets, regionals, nationals, tougher practice routines. Remember, mismatched goals are where gremlins thrive. 3. Chimp-proof your practice. Don't leave your chimp brain room to negotiate. Want to make practice stick? Lower the barrier to entry. Make it harder not to practice than to practice. Think of it as toddler proofing, except the toddler is a 200-pound chimp who loves nachos. 4. Use the just one rule. Tell yourself you'll throw for just 10 minutes or just play one checkout drill. Once you start, momentum usually carries you. It's like saying, I'll have just one chip. Except instead of suddenly finding yourself with an empty bag, you find yourself with an hour of solid practice. 5. Build routines that stick. Habit stacking is your friend. Attach practice to something you already do. After dinner, 20 minutes on doubles. Morning coffee, 50 darts at triple 20. After Shane texts you excuses about not practicing, throw until you stop laughing. 6. quality over quantity. Commitment isn't just about hours. 15 minutes of deliberate, focused practice beats 3 hours of mindless chucking. Remember Erickson's research on deliberate practice. Improvement comes from focus, feedback, and challenge, not from simply standing at the hockey until your arm falls off. And 7, accountability works. Tell someone your goals. Post it in the Dart Brain Facebook group. Even better, find a practice buddy. Because let's be honest, it's a lot harder to skip practice when someone's waiting for you. Unless that someone is Shane, in which case, well, bring snacks because he's not showing up. So here's the big takeaway. Commitment isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. All right, let's hit the recap bullseye. Today, we pulled apart the motivation myth. And here's what we found. Motivation is a chimp's sugar rush. Fun while it lasts, but gone the second nachos appear. Commitment is the professor's fuel tank. Boring maybe, but steady. And that's what wins in the long run. Commitment isn't a switch, it's a scale. You don't have to live at the hockey to improve. A little boost in commitment from 0 hours to 2 hours a week can transform your game. Your goals must match your commitment. Set them too high for your effort and you'll feed frustration. Too low and you'll get bored. The sweet spot is challenging and realistic. Habits and routines are where commitment actually lives. Chimp-proof your practice. Use the just one rule and make deliberate practice a habit. And finally, neglect is the gremlin you've got to fight. Commitment is the guardian that beats it. One small, consistent action at a time. That's the secret. Commitment doesn't require perfection. It requires showing up, even when your chimp brain or Shane is telling you to bail. So until then, take a breath, trust your throw, and for the love of tungsten, don't let the monkey drive the bus. This has been Dart Brain. I'm Clint Clarkson. Until next time, stay focused, throw with purpose, and train your dart brain.